to the icon. Good morning, everyone. We are ready to do law number 19, which is the law of timing. So as you're popping on, and if somebody thinks there's somebody popping on, remind me to make sure to let them in, because this is where I sometimes fall apart in my technical pieces. But the law of timing is one. John Maxwell says there's two laws that are hard to learn. He said they're laws that you tend to just kind of have them or not have them, and learning them takes more effort. And the two that he refers to are the law of intuition and the law of timing. And so those are the two laws that he says that we, if they don't come naturally to us, then we really need to go the extra mile to figure them out. He refers to that song, well, if any of you are Western song lovers, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away. That's kind of the whole piece about the law of timing. So I actually wanted to start out with some basic examples of the law of timing that any mom in the room is actually going to get. And we're going to go back to potty training. And how many of you have any of you tried to potty train a little one when they weren't ready? Or not been thinking about it and they were ready? I see Amy nodding. Can you talk, Amy?
Yes, I have done both of those things. So my first child, I think we got it pretty good together. My second child, I think, was ready way before I even recognized that she was ready. Like, I think at about 17 or 18 months, if I would have been like on the bit, I think it would have been done. But at the 2-year mark, when I thought it was time, we struggled for a year. And at that 3-year mark, bribery worked for her. And then she couldn't go to dance until she was potty trained. And that means it took 2 days and it was a done deal. I also then missed the boat again with my fourth one. And I'm not sure if I missed it or if I thought he should be ready and he really wasn't. Numerous times and for a very long time, which meant that it was a big struggle again.
And I think that's kind of the message there is, if you catch the timing, if your timing is right, things flow. If your timing is not right, it's a struggle. That struggle word really comes in. Now, Sharon looked like she was just sort of thinking, well, how could you not catch on? Well, for somebody for whom the law of timing is a really strong and like a really positive feeling, they're not going to miss it. They just know. Sharon, as you're thinking about it, can you think of any things that were the clues for you? Or did you just know? Like just know?
So if we're talking about potty training, because it's, in my case, I got to potty train a lot of kids because I was in childcare before as a private nanny. So I've potty trained something like 14 kids, even though I only have 2. So my girls were easy by the time I got to them, because I'd experimented on everyone else. But yeah, it's when they showed interest, where they were wanting to go, when they were super interested in what I was doing in the bathroom, when they would sit their dolls on the toilet. When they were interested in it, it would just be seizing that opportunity. Or if they were really little, like around the 18-month mark, because Amy's right, some kids can be that young, if they like stop and go to the bathroom because they're well aware that they're actually going to the bathroom and watching for that, that's like an indication too, right? That you can see, whereas before, other 18-year-old kids will not even be aware. They'll just be running and doing the poop. It's no
Yeah.
big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so I do know a little bit of law of timing. I was thinking, oh, I don't know if I'm good at that, but maybe I am.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we're good at one area of law of timing, we may not be good at all the areas yet, but we've got a lot of those innate understandings of a lot of the areas. John Maxwell talks about the wrong action at the wrong time is a disaster, usually for everybody around. He says the wrong action at the right time is more like a mistake. Didn't go well, things to learn. He said the right action at the wrong time equals resistance. He talks about this one quite a bit. You're doing the right thing, but people are resisting. Nobody's getting on board. Like nobody seems to be catching the vision. Nobody and you're frustrated, and that's because it's the right thing, but the wrong time. And then he said the right thing at the right time, of course, is huge success. So I think in the book he had seven items that he talked about for the law of timing. And the first one was understanding the big picture. And I mean, the whole piece on body training, we understand the big picture. We understand this is going to be the goal. By the time they go to school, we want them to be body trained, if possible. So we know that that's part of the big picture. We know that that's part of one of the things that we're doing to help our kids become independent, to grow, all those things. So understanding that big picture is a big piece of it. The second part he talks about is maturity and the motives, our motives. So our motives of doing something because it's all about us and it's more convenient for us, or not doing it because it's more convenient for us, or doing it because it's the right thing for the situation. So if we dig into that one a little bit, if we think about potty training, just because that's the example we're on today, sometimes our motives aren't quite a fit for the child's development. Sometimes it's easier for us to put that diaper on and just keep going because it's not convenient. And we want to wait till summer. We want to wait till a different time. We think we're fitting into the law of timing, but we're not fitting in to the maturity and the motives of the law of timing. So if anybody has comments or questions on that piece of the law of timing, I'd be really interested in hearing what you're thinking.
So I'm going to actually use a work example. So this is not potty training, unfortunately for you. As staff, we had a really big project that we've been working on, and we had it all packaged and ready to launch in May of 2020. And we kind of looked at each other as staff and said, for us to launch this right now, which is a really positive announcement, really forward-looking, it was going to be tone deaf to the industry and the struggles that they were currently going through. And it was one of those things of saying, we had a plan. We had a full plan. We had a media release launch plan. We had it all packaged. And it was that stepping back and having to say, our plan is not the most important thing. Actually having this received well is more important. And to do that, we're going to delay it. And so we delayed until September. And the difference that made was huge. It gave people time over the summer to adjust to COVID, the restrictions, and all the other personal upheaval happening both personally and also within the industry, for them to actually hear then something positive that was future looking, that was not about the current circumstances in September of 2020. And for us, waiting those 4 to 5 months was huge in terms of the reception it got. And that really was, for me, that example of the law of timing and making sure that we don't impose our own plan, our own agenda on a situation.
That's a really good example, because he later on talks about, and I'll talk about them later, but the indicators of timing, and one of them is the law of buy-in. And that would have been what you recognized wasn't in place, and which was why the law of timing wasn't ready.
Well, recognizing, can your audience hear it? Can they not only hear it, but can they actually process and think it through and get on board?
Cool. That's a great example. So his third one in the law of timing is confidence. Do you believe that this can be done now? Do you believe you can accomplish it? And I think that's one of the really big ones we find in Plexus, is when people believe they can, they do. They're able to move forward. They're able to do hard things. And if they don't believe, then that's the piece where we are building belief. We're gifting them our belief in them so that they can develop their belief in them. The fourth one he mentions is decisiveness. He says, timing does not wait. And if it's the right timing, then you just simply need to move forward. I raised 4 kids. Potty training is high on my timing list. So does anybody have a different example that would fit that decisiveness? I know in the book they talk about examples with politicians and examples with government decisions, which are really, really big ones. But I actually think we have everyday ones where that decisiveness makes a difference. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Amy? Yeah.
And I think this falls in that decisiveness, but the message you receive from someone you don't know very well and says, yeah, I want to try what you're trying. And there's the step one of the timing. It's the right time for them. And I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been able to talk somebody out of it. Oh, you need more information, or what about this? Or all they said is they wanted to start with what I was taking. Like, okay, great. What's your top goal? Let's get you the products that are simple to use. Like, all done in a day.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, what about this option? Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, what about this option? Now that I've overwhelmed their brain, and it's a week later and a tragedy happens or something else happens and we're on hold.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've had somebody call like, okay, they want to start with pink drink. Great. That's awesome. Well, you know, what are your issues? And oh, this other product would be awesome. And this product. And again, I've overwhelmed them. And it's been 1.5 years for that girl. And I still don't know if it would have been done in a day. And the pink drink would have helped her.
Those are some great examples of when somebody's ready, seize the moment, because that's the right timing. That's a great example. His fifth one is experience. Learn from the wisdom of others. And I actually feel in Plexus, we have an incredible amount of wisdom and experience that we can learn from. Sometimes more than we're able to actually take in. It's like the fire hose coming in versus the garden hose. And sometimes we just have to go, whoa, 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 whoa. I just need a small amount and let me test this out. And then if that's working, great. If it's not, okay, then I'll try something a little different. That ability to be a bit flexible and to take in wisdom from others. And this one, this one makes me think of cooking a meal. So how many of you have cooked a meal, and we're thinking law of timing here, and the potatoes were ready and the meat wasn't, and the vegetables were still frozen, or this one, like it just was not coming together. And how many of you then started to either think back or call back on those grandmas or moms or friends that seem to always have things come together and say, well, how does this work? Like, what do you start first? Like, I don't understand. So I don't know, maybe this screen is full of ladies that have always had everything come together at the exact right moment to put on the table. If you have, please tell us how. If you haven't, are you willing to share what you've learned? I saw Linda there. Can you share, Linda?
You just have them sit down and they visit at the table while the rest of the meal gets cooked. And,
That's plan B. Adjust. Resiliency.
or worse yet is when your meal is ready and nobody shows up.
Well, there we go.
You
That
know,
happens too.
Yeah, but you don't worry. You just go with the flow.
Who else has had that happen?
Well, I have had that happen where we have had everything ready, including the salad. And we're like, oh no, now we need to eat our salad, but how are we going to keep everything warm? And so over the years, we have learned that the timing of it, right? You make sure your turkey's in the oven at 2 o'clock. You make sure if you're eating at 5, your potatoes are on at 4:30, 20 to 5, so that you time it out so that you're not eating your salad while your turkey is getting cold.
Yeah, so that's that, learn from experience kind of thing. Get wisdom from others. That's that's really what that's all about. And it's keep trying. It's not going to be right the first time. Or if it is, it's not going to be right the second time because it was just a fluke. And every time you do something a little different, like maybe choose a different meat or a different side or a different vegetable, things need adjusting again. So the law of timing is really something that we do on a daily basis. And whether we do it well or whether we don't depends on all these same factors that it does in a corporate setting. The sixth one he mentions is intuitiveness. And that's that whole intuitive piece of, I feel like it's taking longer for the brisket to cook, maybe because it's winter out there when it's smoking. And I'm really glad that I don't have to have it ready at a specific time. And then you start checking, it's like, oh yeah, no, it is not going to be ready. But sometimes that intuitiveness of just feeling that you maybe need to make an adjustment, or just feeling that maybe the oven's not quite right, or just feeling that those guys aren't going to show up at the right time. And you make that adjustment based on that. And he talks about that morale, and that really, Linda nailed that on the head beautifully, that it's okay. It's not a big deal. We just make a little adjustment. We'll all still eat, we'll serve you a little something to drink first. Keep it all going well. And the seventh one he mentions is preparation. And this is the one, is your team equipped for success? And I think we can dig into this one a little bit as well. That's on the meal prep piece. Do you have the things to make the meal? Do you have the equipment? Do you have the skill? Do you know how to do the things you're going to do? On the potty training side, do you have what you need to help that child potty train? Like, do you have all of the things? And so in our Plexus business, it's the same thing. Is the team equipped? So if anybody has some examples or some thoughts on what equipping looks like in whatever circumstance you're thinking about, or what you might need to do in advance on the equipping side. Amy?
Well, I think we're in the process of learning a really cool equipping piece, and that's using the Boards app. And we've talked about all the little pieces, and if anyone has not downloaded the Boards app, you don't have to. You can go online on your web browser, go to Boards app, and you can set up your own account for free. And these lovely ladies have access to a shared board. And you get, and the best way I can describe it, and I am so sorry, this is my business piece coming out, is a filing cabinet. So the board is a filing cabinet. And then in that filing cabinet is categories. And so onboarding category or sharing an event category. And when you open that next layer of category, in there is all the pieces. So the filing cabinet that these lovely Grow leadership has provided has everything. It's a big filing cabinet. So for someone brand new, that's a big cabinet. Okay, but you can open only one drawer. You don't have to open every drawer. You can just open one. And maybe it's just the how to send a message board. Oh, or the send a happy birthday. You can make a special file for happy birthdays. Messages that you send more than once, or messages. I happened to have to text my upline yesterday and say, I know this exists. I've looked in these places. I can't find it. Can you send it again? My lovely upline sent it again. And I was like, okay. And I got that message sent, and I'm like, I can put this in a board. Then I can find it. And after I had done that, I read the next message and it says, did you add it to your Boards app? Yes, I did. And she was brilliant to remind me of that. So that for quick reference, for when I need it next month, this month, in 6 months. That particular tool is equipping for the law of timing, for all of those pieces that we can choose to personalize and move into our own filing cabinet. So this big, huge filing cabinet, we can move the files we like into our own little filing cabinet.
Yeah, and that's a piece of equipping, is to take what is right for you and put it where you can quickly access it so that you can be a fit on the law of timing. Yeah, that's a great example. So he goes into talking about indicators of timing, like when's the time to move forward? And he's talking from a corporate example. So I think each one of them will probably kind of think through a bit in terms of how that actually relates to us. But the first one is after you defined reality. And so the first thing is we have to kind of know what the situation is. And it's really odd, but what initially came to mind on that one, and Sharon, I hope you're okay with me mentioning this, is Sharon's whole situation about moving, about thinking about moving, about wanting to move, about going through the process, about doing all the things. But they didn't even start that until they defined reality, the reality for them. And correct me, Sharon, if I'm wrong, but the reality being income generation was not happening in the location they were at, and there was an opportunity for it to occur somewhere else. And so that was that first step. Sharon, as we go along here, if I say something there that you want to add or change, or because it's really your story.
No, I can tell. That's actually an interesting example of timing because it's because we did do the things, right? The timing was right, the need was there. We knew that we wanted to go back to BC. That was the goal. Like 10 years ago, that was the goal. We left so we could come back. That's why we had left. Right. Yeah, and then timing kind of just happened with Ben's job and all of that. But then it was really interesting because we then we hit a roadblock, and then in that case the timing was actually out of our control because we were doing all the things that we needed to, right? I had my house like a show home, and Ben was living in BC and I was in Alberta, and we were going through all of this stuff, and I was doing showings and all of that. Nobody could believe the house was selling, even though we did everything that we needed to do, but the timing was off, right? And that's interesting because, I mean, the timing was off because in March I had, like, of course, a brain tumor diagnosed that immediately had to be removed, right? And go through the surgery. And I'm thankful for the timing in that case, that the timing was out of my control, even though we did all the things, because the reality is, as much as I love BC, it wouldn't have gotten diagnosed and I wouldn't have gotten help here. And the reality is I would have died and we wouldn't have known why, right? That it was serious. I was like weeks away kind of thing before it was discovered, right? So that was a timing thing. Yeah, with Calgary. And then after like the surgery and the recovery, just enough recovery, it was amazing how quickly our house sold. But we were also able to do that because we had everything in place before that. It was just kind of a matter of getting it up and going again, because then the time was right. And I think from a faith-filled perspective, to approach life that way, where we do all the things that we need to do, but sometimes God does say, nope, not yet. Right? Yeah, and being aware of that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, Sharon, because you'd done all the things. You had the confidence to know what you were doing right. Your motives were right. You'd made a decision. You were getting wisdom and experience. You had all those things in place, and you were just waiting for it to unfold. So when it was able to unfold, boom, you had the law of timing then was on your side because you had all of the preparation in place. That's really a good example. So the second one, he says, after you've defined reality, the second one is after you have identified the issues.
We were feeding the calves across the river at the same time.
So identifying issues includes a lot of things. It includes all those resources. It includes, I think Brenna's example in the beginning was maybe a really good one about after they identified the issues of that timing, they made a decision to change the timing. There was a piece there that wasn't ready to go. And so that led them to there. Go ahead, Brenna.
I would actually say this is one of the things that I'm not sure how many of you have worked with grants, but applying for money and, being ready for when the money comes, but you can't be too ready because you can't start spending money until the start date, until it's approved, until everything's signed, until everything, but you need everything in place for when it does get signed. And it's that timing of how do you be prepared, but you can't be over prepared. Timing issue that is this balancing act. And this is one where I'm in the midst of putting together a final proposal. The expectation is that it's going to be approved by April 1st. I want a person in place by April 1st, but I don't want to hire them in advance. It's all these things of how do you be prepared, but not too prepared to make the timing all work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And his third one about indicators of timing to move are after you meet with your influencers. So he's talking about your inner circle, your key players. In a family decision, husband, wife, maybe somebody else that is a part of that. In a business space, that would be, the person that is overseeing you. It would be people that you're working with. It might be contractors, it might be staff, it might be who are the key players. But after you've met with them and had that conversation about, are we ready? What's missing? Is there anything missing? Do we have a timeline laid out for when we actually initiate this whole process? His fourth one is after you received buy-in. So sometimes you meet with those key players, but you actually don't have buy-in. They've got all sorts of questions. They've got all sorts of concerns. And until you're able to walk through them, either address them, figure them out, fix them, whatever that might be, you don't have buy-in. And buy-in from somebody that doesn't have a stake in the plan is not buy-in. So you're doing the potty training and your best friend who lives in another country says, yeah, go for it. Yeah, they don't really. That's not really buy-in. Buy-in's your husband who may have to do some extra work. Buy-in might even include a childcare person who is going to have to follow through on the program. Buy-in is key players. Buy-in isn't somebody over here that says, oh yeah, you should do that thing. Yeah, no, that's not actually buy-in. The fifth one he mentions is communicated vision. And this is one that I think we often think we've given the vision. We've given that big picture. But communicated vision also includes, what do I need to do next? What's my part in this? What's it going to look like for me? Yes, Sharon.
So I was thinking of, as I was listening to this, because I'm of course in BC, an example of someone who's done this really, really well. I don't know how much news you guys get there, how much you've been following, is Laura Clausen's dad is the mayor of Abbotsford. Right now, he could probably lead our province off a cliff and we would follow. Right. And he's done this communication so incredibly well and so beautifully on his little daily YouTube channel updates. Like, it's just the city of Abbotsford. It's not a big thing, that people are tuning in from all around the province, and he's communicating, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. And he is graciously explaining it to the people and to the masses, which he doesn't have to. There's not examples of that in leadership, federally or around the world. They're just doing whatever, and it's people are just confused. But he's taking the time. He's taken the time to do that and to lead so well through this crisis that as the crisis has went on, people have bought into it. His ability to communicate has even increased, and to answer the questions, he's hit every single one of the components. I mean, he kind of knows who he needs to have on board and who he's waiting for, and straight up said, I'm waiting for a report from the fire department or whatever, right? They're going in, and he communicated all of that so well. He led so beautifully. It was really interesting to watch it while reading this book, actually, because you could see all of those things in place. And then timing too, because it's his experience too that he's had in the past has allowed him to lead so well through this. So yeah, that was just my thought. That's just I just think it's an example of that.
That's a great example. And it's one that I had no idea that he even had a YouTube channel. Of course, I'm not keeping up in my dry prairie country with the situation. So yes, I'm curious now. I'm going to go looking for that. So that's really good, because seeing examples of how people do it is incredibly valuable. Yeah, I love that. Love that. The sixth one that he says that is an indicator of timing to move is after you have modeled the behavior. So after you've shown people what needs to happen, how it needs to happen, and they have that level of trust in your modeled behavior, trust in your skill set, in your equipping, then they can see how it works for them. And the seventh one he says is after you overcome the issues. Go ahead, Brenna.
I just want to go back to that after you've modeled piece, because previously, I don't know which law it was, he talks about planning ahead and giving your team time to process whatever the plan is that you've laid out, whatever the vision or the roadmap is that you've given. This is so important, not just in terms of timing, but that whole resistance idea of having your people actually say whatever the vision or the roadmap is, to actually for them to process and understand what their part that they play is. And therefore, they can be one of those cogs in the wheel that makes the timing go just amazing because they understand their role in the whole thing. If you don't give them that time to see what you've put forward, to see the plan, to buy in, to understand their role, you're going to be constantly misfiring. And it's going to be like this really jerky thing, like the 16-year-old who's never driven a standard before. It's constantly stalling. There's no flow or momentum to it.
Yeah, that's a really, really good example on that modeled behavior. And I think another one is you think you've got it all set up. You think everything's perfect. You think you've got your law of timing all figured out, and there's a glitch. And you know what? There's always going to be a glitch. And helping everyone to understand that there's always going to be a glitch. How do we respond to glitches? That's about how do we think about them? Do we get all worked up? Do we? Yeah, Linda. Oh, that was perfect, Linda. If that's how we respond, we amp up the anxiety for the whole team. That's just exactly what happened. Linda's example earlier on how to respond, like, it's no big deal. Sit around the table, have a visit while we finish. Like the ability to be resilient when there's a glitch is a huge part of that team being able to move forward and being ready to move forward. And that's like that 7, overcome the issues. Those are the glitches. Those are the things. There's going to be things. And if your project is potty training, maybe the things aren't real big things. Maybe they're kind of bigger. If your project is moving, there's a lot of moving pieces that have to come together for everything to work out. But if your project is, Abbotsford, the city of Abbotsford having a flood, and you're trying to navigate through it and you don't know what's coming next, weather's unreliable, events are outside your control, it's a lot more complicated to think about all the issues. And you really are looking for that cohesive team that can come in and provide expertise on those various parts. So I think we're really fortunate in Plexus specifically is we get to deal with smaller ones as we start. Some of those issues seem really, really big when we begin. I think probably everybody on the screen has helped somebody start and they've had an issue. The timing was right for them. The timing was right for you. You thought you had it all coming together and they had an issue and boom, all done. And then we're like, well, they weren't ready. I did something wrong. We look for all the how we could have made it right. Well, yes, there maybe were things that we could have done differently. Maybe it was all part of the process and the journey. Most of us have started something that we quit. Sometimes we restart, sometimes we don't. It's all part of our journey. So the whole piece on the timing of when we're doing things in our business, how we're doing things in our business, what's right for us, it's all part of who we're becoming to be the person that we need to be to provide the value that we're needing to provide for our goals, our values, our who we are. So I think the law of timing is really one that gives us an opportunity to think through all those pieces. So while we're thinking about it, I'd love it if somebody was able to share a time when law of timing worked really well for them, or a time when it didn't, and they realized where an adjustment needed to happen.
Hay and 200 barley to get us through March or April and May. So these calculations which we have.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of here, like just in Plexus even. I probably 2 years ago almost now, Carrie and I, we kind of took a little core group of people that we thought were interested, and our little group was like awesome. The information that we gave them and like the relationship building and all of this stuff, but the timing was off. They just weren't ready, just weren't whatever. And it's not that the information was there. I think that we were inexperienced too. I think that that's a lot of it as well, because we were like, we'll just kind of learn as we go and whatever. But it never really went anywhere other than, oh, we've got good relationships with all those people, right? Because the timing was off. It would be really interesting to try something like that again, because what we were doing is actually very, very similar to our IPA challenge that we're doing now. And it's people are thriving under it. It's not that the plan was bad, right? Because that's what we did. We took the perfect 10, we halved it.
Yeah.
Right. And it was actually the pandemic, I think, too, is maybe starting or right before. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. But it's the timing was just off. Right. There were a lot of things, right? So yeah, it would be interesting to you fail forward and then you try again. It would be really interesting to try it again, I think, with even some of those same people.
Yeah. So it's like that was the right action. But the timing wasn't quite right. And then there was some resistance. Yeah. 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 And sometimes we need to become aware. Yes, Diana.
It's really hard sometimes to know when is the right timing. With your business, for example, when you're reaching out, you don't know if that person, just lost a friend or if whatever the situation is. And so it's really hard to know when the timing is going to be right and when it's wrong.
I think that's an interesting thought, Diana, because I think we could think about what makes the timing right for us to reach out.
Well, for myself, it seems right. But for that other person, it's hard to know if it is right.
So if it's right for you to reach out, then, and you reach out, how do you know then whether it's right for the other person?
It'll have some bales in there that was
That's a good question. I guess, you feel like they're not responding or they're ghosting you you know, things like that. And it's like, well, maybe it's not the right timing for them.
Yeah, no,
Go ahead, Sharon.
But it, no, that's something more.
I think sometimes too, it's just asking and telling. There's a girl that I was talking to who's very, very, very interested in plexus. She wants to try it. She probably will. But when I messaged her, not only did she have all the stress from December and her babies and her the business she owns with her husband, which is like right now, but her little girl was very sick. And then little did she know, her little girl actually had surgery like 3 days later, had to have emergency surgery, right? But she told me, and very nicely, she said, I am interested, very interested in this, but I just cannot add another thing. I realize it does not take a great amount of time to take supplements, but just to kind of learn timing and whatever, when I'm supposed to do that, I just cannot add another thing. Please come talk to me in January.
Yeah.
Fine, you know, good, great, you know. So I think, yeah, sometimes it's just asking people and just getting observant, and sometimes it's experience too, right? It's the whole feeling forward, right? Yeah.
A lot of running with the-
Yeah.
Yeah, opening up miles slows you down quite a bit. Yes.
Great thoughts, Sharon.
So we could do.
Because it's true. If I pick up the phone to phone somebody, or if I send a message, I don't know where the other person is at in terms of receiving it. So I can tell myself any story in my head I want to. Until I'm, like Sharon said, observant or become aware or get a clue of some sort. Yeah, Sharon?
Sorry, I'm all awake now. I had a cup of tea.
Perfect. Perfect.
But here's actually an example of really bad timing, which most people don't know this, because of course I didn't talk about it, but when I did my video asking for prayer with my tumor, it went viral. I had like 13,000 views, and it was shared all over, which was really cool. Right. And I had a lot of people like messaging me and saying that, you know, we're praying or sending you positive energy or whatever. That was fine. But I actually had a massive amount of network marketers reach out to me, right? Where it's like, and selling me everything, wanting to sell me everything from special waters to essential oils to plexus. I had a few plexus people reach out to me, different things, and saying, well, if you just take this product, you're going to be fine. Right. And I had a lot of grace, because I'm like, okay, listen, like I've been a network marketer, and they probably think that they're doing the right thing. But the timing of that, no matter how great their product was, no matter how great or how much they believe in it, the timing was so horrific that it's like, dude, like I might be dead before your product shows up. Like, just realistically, I'm comfortable with saying that. But I think being aware of that for us, right? A little bit of common sense is going to go a long ways. And some of it is experience, I think, too. But that's I think an example of timing gone wrong, because I'm sure the stuff that they were selling is fine, and I'm sure that they really do believe in it, right? And maybe it could help, not necessarily like shrink a tumor, but help with recovery or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's, I think, important for us to remember with timing too, is with what we do, we have to have that relationship first, right?
Yeah.
Because it's real gross when, I mean, you don't even know the person. They don't even know you. They don't even know what country you're in. Right. And then, yeah, I don't know. It's just not good. It was interesting to see how some people interpret what we are told to do.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
No, that really does make sense. And the way those messages come through definitely makes a difference. Yeah, it was like the feeling coming through for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that they were contacting you to sell something. They weren't contacting you because they cared about you. And I think that first message always when you see something related to somebody struggling needs to be a message of care.
The day before I fed them a bail and they hadn't cleaned up the bail from the day before that. So
Okay. Any other examples on the law of timing that anyone is willing to share?
Start feeding pellets soon to the cows. Had not intended to feed pellets to the cows.
Well, I think in terms of timing, we are coming close to Christmas. So we are going to give everybody like kind of a closing before Christmas and say, this has been an absolutely marvelous 19 laws, 19 weeks so far. We're going to take a break. We are not going to talk about laws on Christmas Day or New Year's Day. We are going to do the right things there that we need to do with family, with friends, with whatever our projects are. And we are going to reconvene with the 21 laws, and it'll be with law number 20, and it'll be the second week of January. I believe that's the 8th, if anybody's got a calendar handy, but the 8th of January. Yes, Amy?
I was going to say, it is actually okay to discuss the laws with your family at those occasions. It's just that we won't be meeting here in the Zoom setting.
Oh, this is true. You could have some very interesting discussions. I've been loving going through these laws and thinking about examples that are relevant to us today in different circumstances, whether it be home life or business life or corporate life or whatever it is. So yes, thank you so much, everybody, for contributing today and for participating. And awesome, awesome, awesome. Jimmy Lou says, took my cleaning gloves off to say Merry Christmas, praying for everyone. You'll all have a great break. Thank you, Jimmy Lou. We so appreciate your presence here. And we're all thinking about Janelle today. So prayers for her and her family as well through this season. And we'll be excited about getting back together for the 21 Laws, January 8th.
I'll talk to Jacques and see